They called her the Alpha's burden. For 5 years, Alora Ashford endured the cruelty of her mate, Alpha Theron Blackwell, who paraded his mistress through the Ashfall pack house. While Alora knelt beneath their feet, she was told she was lucky that an alpha would claim a wolfless girl with no family, no standing, no voice. But luck had a price, and Alora paid it in bruises hidden beneath long sleeves and silence swallowed like broken glass. What Theron didn't know was that Alora's wolf wasn't absent. She was sleeping, waiting, dreaming of white fur, silver moonfire, and moonlight. When Alora finally fled into the cursed Evernight Forest, a place where wolves entered but never returned, she thought she was choosing death over degradation. She didn't know that the forest was listening. She didn't know that the Alpha King had been searching for something lost for 1,000 years. And she certainly didn't know that his life-bond kiss would wake the white wolf sleeping inside her. Get ready, because the hunted is about to become the hunter. And the kingdom that threw her away is about to learn what fear truly means. The Ashfall pack house reeked of cedar smoke and old blood. It was a scent Alora had grown to associate with misery, a smell that clung to the stone wall and seeped into her skin. No matter how hard she scrubbed, she was on her knees in the east corridor, polishing the baseboards with a rag that had seen better days. Her fingers were cracked and raw, the knuckles swollen from years of labor that never seemed to end. At 22, Alora should have been standing beside her mate at pack gatherings, dressed in silk, commanding respect. Instead, she wore a threadbare gray dress and flinched at shadows. The sound of heels clicking against stone made her stomach clench. "Still here, little mouse?" The voice was honeyed poison. Vesper Crane, daughter of the pack's High Council chief and Theron's very public mistress, stood over Alora with her arms crossed. She was stunning in the way a viper was stunning, all sleek, dark hair and calculating amber eyes. I told the Kitchens to send someone competent. Clearly, they misunderstood. Alora kept her head down. "I'll be finished soon. You'll be finished when I say you're finished." Vesper crouched down, her perfume, jasmine, and something bitter invading Alora's senses. "Theron is hosting the Meridian delegation tonight. Important wolves, powerful wolves, and you will not embarrass him by existing in their line of sight." "I wasn't planning to attend." "Attend?" Vesper laughed, a brittle sound like cracking ice. "Oh, sweet thing, you're not even allowed in the same wing." "Theron's orders. He says your scent makes him nauseous now." She tilted her head, studying Alora with mock pity. "It must be hard being mated to someone who can't stand to look at you." "Then again, what did you expect? A wolfless bride is barely a bride at all. You're just a contract he regrets signing." The words cut, but Alora had learned to bleed quietly. Vesper stood smoothing her white dress. "Finish the corridor, then report to the cellars. The wine casks need rotating before the guests arrive." She paused at the corner, glancing back with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "And Alora, if I catch you anywhere near the Great Hall tonight, I'll have the guards remove you publicly. Theron won't stop me. You know he won't." The heels clicked away, fading into silence. Alora exhaled slowly, pressing her forehead against the cold stone. 5 years. 5 years of this suffocating existence. She had been 17 when Theron claimed her. a naive orphan dazzled by the attention of a powerful alpha. She hadn't understood then that his interest wasn't affection. It was acquisition. A wolfless omega with no family meant no political complications, no one to answer to, and no one to protect her. She was property, nothing more. Her wolf, if she even had one, had never stirred, not once. The pack healers said she was hollow, a genetic dead end. Taryn reminded her of this often, usually after he'd spent the night in Vesper's chambers. Elora dipped her rag into the bucket of gray water and resumed scrubbing. Tonight was the Meridian delegation. Important wolves, powerful wolves. She didn't know yet that tonight would also be the night everything shattered. The cellars beneath the Ashfall pack house were cold and dark, filled with the musty scent of aging oak and fermenting grapes. Elora worked alone, her breath misting in the frigid air. As she rolled the heavy casks according to the wine master's instructions, her arms ached, her back screamed, but physical pain was preferable to the hollow ache in her chest, so she kept moving. It was nearly midnight when she heard the voices. They drifted down through the ventilation grate above her head, muffled but unmistakable. Theron's low rumble and another voice, older, rougher, a voice she recognized as Lord Corvinus, head of the Meridian delegation. Elora froze, her hand resting on a cask. "The offer is generous," Corvinus was saying, "but I need assurances. The girl, she's truly wolfless." "Completely," Taryn replied, and Elora could hear the smirk in his voice. "Tested multiple times. No beast, no power, no complications. She's essentially human with a mating mark, and she won't resist the procedure. She won't know about the procedure until it's too late. I'll have her sedated and delivered to your facility by week's end. After that, she's your problem." Elora's blood turned to ice. Corvinus chuckled, a wet, unpleasant sound. "The harvesters will be pleased. Wolfless vessels are rare. Her bone marrow alone will fetch a fortune on the black market. And if the experiments work, we might be able to extract whatever dormant essence remains. A full drain. I don't care what you do with her," Taryn said. "Just make sure the payment clears before the next moon. I'm announcing Vesper as my official Luna at the solstice gathering. I need the wolfless embarrassment gone before then. Consider it done." Footsteps retreated. A door closed. Elora stood paralyzed in the darkness, her heart slamming against her ribs so hard she thought it might crack through bone. Harvested, drained, sold like livestock to illegal experimenters who would strip her body for parts. Her mate, the man who had sworn before the moon goddess to protect her, was selling her to butchers. The terror came first, a wave of it so intense her knees buckled. She caught herself on the cask, gasping for air that suddenly felt thick as syrup. Then came the rage. It sparked somewhere deep in her chest, a flicker of heat in a place that had always been cold and empty. For one dizzying moment, Elora thought she heard something, a growl, distant and ancient, rumbling from the void inside her. But it faded as quickly as it came. She had no wolf to save her, no family, no allies. She had only herself, and she had until week's end. Elora looked up at the ventilation grate, then toward the cellar's back entrance, a service door that led to the forest's edge, the Evernight Forest cursed territory. No wolf from Ashfall had ventured past its border in over a century. Rumors claimed that wolves from other packs had tried over the years, but none had survived the crossing in over 300 years. But madness was better than being carved apart on an operating table. Alora made her decision. Tonight she would run. The forest swallowed her whole. Alora ran blindly through the darkness, branches clawing at her face, roots snagging her feet. She had fled through the cellar door with nothing but the thin gray dress on her body and the terror pounding in her veins. Behind her, she could hear the distant howls beginning. Theron's trackers catching her scent. The Evernight forest loomed ahead, a wall of black trees so dense they blocked out the stars. The border was marked by ancient stones covered in warnings carved in the old tongue. Alora didn't slow down. She crashed through the barrier and kept running. The moment she crossed the threshold, the world changed. The howls behind her stopped, not faded, stopped, as if the wolves chasing her had hit an invisible wall and simply ceased to exist. But Alora couldn't feel relief. The forest was pressing in on her. The air thick with a presence she couldn't name. The trees here were massive, their bark black as coal, their branches twisted into shapes that looked almost deliberate, almost alive. She ran until her lungs burned. She ran until her legs gave out. When she finally collapsed, it was in a clearing she didn't remember entering. Silver moonlight poured through a gap in the canopy, illuminating a pool of water so still it looked like polished glass. The grass beneath her was soft, impossibly soft, and somewhere in the trees she heard a sound like wind chimes made of bone. Alora tried to push herself up, but her arms wouldn't obey. The cold was seeping into her now, the adrenaline fading, leaving only exhaustion and the creeping numbness of hypothermia. Her dress was soaked with dew and blood from a dozen small cuts. This is where I die, she thought, alone in a cursed forest. Maybe that's fitting. She closed her eyes. The footsteps came soft and steady, barely disturbing the grass. Alora was too weak to turn her head, too far gone to care. Let it be a beast. Let it be quick. A shadow fell over her. Open your eyes. The voice was deep, commanding, threaded with an authority that seemed to vibrate in her bones. It wasn't a request. Alora's eyes fluttered open. The man standing above her was illuminated by the moonlight like something from a fever dream. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with hair the color of midnight and eyes that glowed faintly amber in the darkness. His face was carved from sharp angles, beautiful and brutal in equal measure. He wore black leather and silver armor, and at his hip hung a sword with a hilt shaped like a howling wolf. But it was his presence that stole her breath. Power radiated from him in waves, a pressure so immense it made the air feel heavy. Every instinct Alora didn't know she possessed screamed a single word. Alpha. Not just an alpha, the alpha. You crossed the border, he said, studying her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. No wolf has survived that crossing in 300 years. Then kill me, Alora whispered, her voice cracked and hollow. I'm already dead anyway. Something flickered in those amber eyes. Not pity, something deeper. He crouched beside her and she caught his scent. Pine and wood smoke, and something electric, like the air before a storm. You're not dead, he murmured. You're dormant. There's something inside you, little wolf, something old, something that called to me across 1,000 miles. He reached out, his calloused fingers brushing her cheek with surprising gentleness. I've been searching for you for a very long time. Elora wanted to ask what he meant. She wanted to demand answers, to fight, to flee again. But the cold had stolen everything. Her eyes began to close. "No," the man growled. "Stay with me. I didn't cross empires to watch you slip away in my own forest." Darkness pulled at her, heavy and final. She felt her heartbeat slowing, her breath turning shallow. And then he pressed his mouth to hers, not in desire, but to breathe ancient moonfire into her dying lungs. The life bond breath was not gentle. It was moonfire and lightning, a surge of energy that exploded through her frozen veins like silver moonfire. Elora gasped against his lips as heat flooded her chest, her limbs, and her very bones. Something deep inside her, something that had been locked in chains for 22 years, began to thrash. The man pulled back, his amber eyes now blazing with shock. "Impossible," he breathed. Elora's body arched off the ground. A scream tore from her throat, but it didn't sound human. It sounded like a howl, and in the depths of her soul, a voice she had never heard before spoke with ancient fury. "Finally, you woke me." The transformation was not a gift. It was a war. Elora's spine bent backward at an angle that should have killed her. She heard the wet crack of bones breaking and reforming, felt her skin split as something massive tried to claw its way out from inside her. The pain was beyond anything she had ever experienced. Beyond the beatings, beyond the starvation, beyond the years of slow spiritual murder at Theron's hands, this was annihilation. The Alpha King stepped back, his amber eyes wide as he watched her body convulse on the silver grass. He had seen countless first shifts in his centuries of existence. He had never seen anything like this. "Fight it," he commanded. "Don't let it consume you. You have to stay in control." But Elora couldn't hear him. She was drowning in memories. She saw herself at 17 standing before Theron for the first time, believing his smile meant safety. She saw the first night he hit her, 3 weeks after their mating ceremony, because she had spoken to a male servant without permission. She saw the years blur together, a montage of humiliation, scrubbing floors while Vesper laughed, sleeping in a closet because Theron said her presence in the bedroom disgusted him, eating scraps from the kitchen after everyone else had finished. She saw the night she had tried to leave 2 years ago, and how Theron's guards had dragged her back. She remembered his hand around her throat, his breath hot against her ear. "You belong to me," he had whispered. "You will always belong to me. And if you ever try to run again, I won't just hurt you. I'll make you watch while I destroy everyone who ever showed you kindness." The memory fractured into fire. Inside the void where her wolf should have been, something ancient was rising. It was not a wolf, not exactly. It was older than ordinary wolves, older than pack law, and bound to the oldest face of the moon goddess herself. It was rage given form, sorrow given teeth, survival given claws, and it was furious. "You let them cage us," the voice thundered through Elora's mind. "You swallowed their poison and called it love." "I didn't know," Elora sobbed, her voice echoing in the darkness of her own consciousness. "I didn't know I had you. I didn't know I had anything. You always had me. They buried me in chains forged from your despair." But his kiss, the presence seemed to pause, considering his bloodline carries the key. He unlocked the first gate. "What are you? I am what they tried to make extinct. I am the first moonfire. I am yours." The presence surged forward, and Alora screamed as her body exploded into light. The Alpha King shielded his eyes as the clearing erupted in silver and white gold. The girl's body was gone. In its place, something was rising from the flames. A wolf unlike any he had seen in his 800 years of life. She was enormous, standing nearly as tall as the ancient trees surrounding the clearing. Her fur was not gray or black like an ordinary wolf. It was luminous white, glowing with pale silver at the edges, as if moonlight itself had learned to take physical form. Her eyes opened. They were no longer the soft violet he had glimpsed before the transformation. They were silver white, ringed with pale gold, ancient and knowing. The White Wolf. The legend was true. Kyle Vorthon, High King of the Veiled Dominion, ruler of the 12 territories, dropped to one knee. He had not knelt for anyone in 3 centuries. But this was not a choice. His wolf, a beast that had dominated every challenger since the Blood Wars, was howling in recognition, in submission, in awe. "You honor me," Kale said, his voice rough. "I searched for centuries. The prophecies said your line was extinguished in the purging. They said the last white wolf died in the flames of her own making." The massive wolf looked down at him. She tilted her head, and despite her terrifying size, something almost confused flickered in those silver eyes. "She doesn't understand," Kyle realized. "She doesn't know what she is." Slowly, carefully, he rose to his feet. He held out a hand, palm up, the way one might approach a wild creature. "You are safe here," he said softly. "This forest is mine. Nothing from the outside world can touch you within these borders. No pack, no alpha, no harvester." His jaw tightened at the last word. He had smelled the terror on her when she collapsed. He had tasted the memories of betrayal on her lips when he kissed her. "Whatever was done to you, whoever did it, I swear on my bloodline they will answer for it." The wolf stared at him for a long moment. Then slowly she began to shrink. The moonfire dimmed, bones cracked and reshaped in reverse. Fur receded into skin. The transformation back was faster than the initial shift, but no less violent. When it was over, Alora lay naked and trembling on the grass. Her hair, once pale as winter wheat, now cascaded around her in waves of silver white, transformed by the fire that had awakened within her. Her skin glowed faintly as if lit from within. She looked up at Kyle, tears streaming down her face. "What is happening to me?" she whispered. Kyle moved without hesitation. He unclasped his heavy black cloak and wrapped it around her shaking body, lifting her into his arms as if she weighed nothing. Her skin was burning hot against his chest, but he didn't flinch. "You're experiencing your first shift," he said, carrying her toward the far edge of the clearing, where the shadows parted to reveal a hidden path. "It should have happened years ago. Something suppressed it." "I don't have a wolf," Alora murmured, her voice delirious. The healers said they tested me. Hollow, empty, defect. The healers were fools or liars. Kyl's voice was hard. You don't have an ordinary wolf, Aelora. You have something far older, something that hasn't walked this realm in over 1,000 years. She looked up at him, her silver eyes still flickering with residual flame. How do you know my name? I know many things about you. I've been tracking the echoes of your bloodline since before you were born. He glanced down at her, his expression unreadable. The question is, how much do you know about yourself? Nothing, she admitted. I'm an orphan, no family, no history. Theron said that's why he chose me, because I was convenient, uncomplicated. Kyl's arms tightened around her. Theron Blackwell is a dead man walking. He just doesn't know it yet. The path opened into a wider trail, and Aelora saw torches flickering ahead. Dark figures emerged from the trees, warriors in black leather armor, their faces covered by masks shaped like snarling wolves. They moved with lethal grace, falling into formation around Kyl without a word. My Shadowfang guard, Kyl explained. They've been patrolling the border since I sensed your approach 3 nights ago. 3 nights? Aelora frowned. I only ran tonight. I felt you before you moved. The moment you made the decision to flee, your wolf sent out a pulse, a distress signal buried so deep you didn't even know you were transmitting it. He met her eyes. I've been waiting at that clearing for 72 hours, Aelora, waiting for you to be brave enough to run. The words hit her like a physical blow. He had known. He had been waiting while she scrubbed floors and swallowed her fear. This man, this king, had been standing in the darkness, ready to catch her. Why? She breathed. Because the white wolves are not just wolves. They are the moonfire that forged our entire species. The first alpha was born from a white wolf's blessing. When your kind disappeared, the balance shattered. He looked ahead toward a massive stone gate, materializing through the mist. The packs have been at war for 1,000 years. Territory disputes, blood feuds, endless cycles of revenge. The prophecies say only the return of the white wolf can unite them. Aelora shook her head weakly. I'm not a savior. I'm a cleaning girl who couldn't even protect herself from her own mate. You were drugged, Kyl said flatly. The food they fed you was laced with moonshade, a poison that suppresses the wolf and dulls the instincts. You were never weak. You were sabotaged. The gate loomed before them now, carved from black granite and inscribed with runes that pulsed with faint blue light. 2 guards pushed it open, revealing what lay beyond. Thornhaven Citadel. It rose from the mountain like a crown of obsidian spires, impossibly tall, impossibly beautiful. Waterfalls cascaded down its walls, glowing with bioluminescent moss. The air smelled of pine and power, and something older, something that made Aelora's newly awakened wolf stir with recognition. Home, the voice in her head whispered. We are home. Kyl carried her through the gates, past rows of guards who dropped to their knees as they passed, past servants who stared with undisguised shock. Summon the healers, Kyl commanded, and send word to the elder territories. Tell them the white wolf has returned. He looked down at Aelora, and for the first time, a hint of softness cracked through his hardened exterior. Rest now, he murmured, when you wake. I will tell you everything. Your bloodline, your enemies, the war that's coming. His amber eyes darkened. and exactly what I intend to do to the man who tried to sell you for parts." Alora wanted to respond. She wanted to demand answers, to understand what was happening, to process the impossible truth that her entire life had been a lie. But exhaustion pulled her under. The last thing she heard before darkness claimed her was Kyl's voice, low and fierce, speaking to someone she couldn't see. "Double the border patrols. The Ashfall pack will realize she's missing by dawn when Taryn Blackwell comes looking for his property." A pause heavy with promise. "Let him come. I want him to see exactly what he threw away." Alora woke to warmth, not the oppressive heat of fever or the false comfort of a dying fire. This was genuine, enveloping warmth, the kind she hadn't felt since childhood, since before the orphanage, since before the years of survival had taught her that safety was an illusion. She lay in a bed that could have swallowed her small room at Ashfall 3 times over. The sheets were silk the color of midnight. The pillows stuffed with down so soft it felt like sleeping on clouds. Sunlight streamed through arched windows that overlooked a vista of snow-capped mountains and endless forest. For one disorienting moment, Alora thought she was dreaming. Then the memories crashed back. The cellar, the overheard conversation, the forest, the kiss, the moonfire that had erupted from her soul and reshaped her into something monstrous. She sat up quickly, clutching the sheets to her chest. Someone had dressed her in a soft white sleeping gown. Someone had brushed the tangles from her hair. The cuts and bruises that had covered her body were gone, replaced by smooth, unmarked skin. The healers worked through the night. Kyl's voice came from the corner of the room. He sat in a leather armchair by the fireplace, watching her with those unreadable amber eyes. He had changed from his armor into simple black clothing. But his presence was no less commanding. "Your body was in worse condition than I realized. Malnutrition, old fractures that never healed properly, scarring on your internal organs consistent with repeated poisoning." His jaw tightened. The moonshade wasn't the only thing they fed you. Alora's hand moved instinctively to her stomach. "I always felt sick. They told me it was because my body was rejecting the mating bond, because I was too weak to handle an alpha's claim." Lies. The word was sharp as a blade. The bond sickness was manufactured. They were slowly killing you, Alora. Another year, perhaps 2, and your organs would have failed. They would have called it a tragic weakness. His eyes flashed with barely contained fury. A convenient death for an inconvenient wife. The reality of it settled over her like a burial shroud. Theron hadn't just abused her. He had been murdering her in increments, so slowly she never realized she was dying. "Why?" she whispered. "Why go through the trouble? He could have rejected me. He could have sent me away." Because rejection requires acknowledgement of the bond. It requires admitting you were his equal, at least in the eyes of the goddess. Kyle rose from the chair, moving toward her with predatory grace. "Theron Blackwell is a man obsessed with appearances. A rejected mate is a stain on his reputation. A dead mate is a tragedy that earns him sympathy." He stopped at the edge of the bed. "Besides, he needed you alive long enough to sell. The harvesters pay premium for living subjects." Alora felt sick. "You heard that? I tasted it. When I kissed you, your memories flooded into me. The terror, the betrayal. Something dark and ancient moved behind his eyes. "I know everything he did to you, Elora. Every blow, every insult. Every night he left you bleeding on cold stone, while he warmed himself in another woman's bed." She should have felt violated. Someone had seen her darkest moments, her deepest shame. But instead, she felt something unexpected: relief. Someone finally knew, someone finally understood, and that someone was powerful enough to do something about it. "What am I?" Elora asked, needing to change the subject before she broke apart. "You called me the White Wolf. You said my kind hasn't existed for 1,000 years. Kyle sat on the edge of the bed, maintaining a respectful distance. "What do you know about the origin of werewolves? The moon goddess created the first alpha from clay and starlight." Elora recited. "Every child learns that story. Every child learns a lie." Kyle's voice dropped. The moon goddess did not create wolves. She blessed them. The true creators were the ancient white wolves of pure moon fire who walked the earth when the world was young. They gave their moon fire to humanity, transforming them into something more. The first wolves were not made from clay. They were made from moonlight and sacred flame, born in the crucible of divine moon fire. Elora's wolf stirred inside her, listening intently. The first white wolves were revered as living conduits of the moon goddess, Kyle continued. But power like that makes kings and councils nervous. The Order of the Silver Veil twisted the goddess's name into a weapon. They convinced the wolf packs that the white wolves were dangerous, that their moon fire would consume the world. They turned the children of the moon against the bloodline that had once protected them. "The purging," Elora breathed, remembering fragments of old legends. 1,000 years ago, the 12 original packs united under the moon goddess's banner and hunted the white wolf to extinction, or so they believed. Kyle reached out, his fingers hovering over her heart without touching. "But moonfire doesn't die. It sleeps, it waits, it finds new vessels." "My parents," Elora said slowly. "Who were they really? Your mother was the last known white wolf, a woman named Seraphina who hid her nature for decades. Your father was her guardian, a wolf who loved her enough to die protecting her secret." Kyle's expression softened slightly. "They weren't killed in a random raid, Elora. They were assassinated by the Order of the Silver Veil, a faction dedicated to ensuring the white wolf never rise again." "Then how am I alive?" "Seraphina was clever. She bound your wolf in chains of her own making, hiding your moonfire so deep that not even the Order's seekers could detect it. She made you appear hollow, broken, unworthy of attention." He paused. "It was the only way to save you." Elora's eyes burned with tears she refused to shed. Her mother had sacrificed everything, even the chance to know her own daughter, to keep her safe. "The chains are breaking now," Kyle said. "My kiss accelerated the process, but it was already beginning. The moonshade poisoning actually helped. Strangely enough, it weakened the bindings your mother created. Another month, and your wolf would have erupted regardless. What happens when the chains fully break?" Kyle's eyes met hers, blazing with intensity. "Then you become what you were always meant to be, the moon fire that forges, or the fire that destroys." He leaned closer, The prophecy speaks of a white wolf who will rise in an age of fractured packs. She will either unite the 12 territories under a single banner or burn them all to ash. And you think that's me? I know it's you. Kyle's voice dropped to a near whisper. I've been waiting for you for 800 years, Alora. My wolf recognized yours the moment you crossed into my forest. The bond between us isn't chance, it's destiny. Before Alora could respond, a thunderous alarm shattered the moment. Bells rang throughout the citadel. Shouts echoed from the corridors below. Kyle was on his feet instantly, his hand going to the blade at his hip. A guard burst through the door, his face pale beneath his mask. My king, the Ashfall delegation has arrived at the southern gate. Alpha Theron Blackwell demands an audience. The guard hesitated. He's claiming we kidnapped his Luna. He's brought 200 warriors, and the guard swallowed. He's brought the Order of the Silver Veil with him. Kyle's expression turned to ice. So he said softly, "The hunter has come seeking his prey." He looked at Alora, and the cold fury in his eyes made her breath catch. Get dressed. It's time you face your past. The great hall of Thornhaven Citadel was a cathedral of black stone and eternal moonfire. Torches burned in iron sconces along walls carved with the history of the Veiled Dominion. Depicting battles and treaties, kings and queens rise and fall. At the far end, twin thrones sat upon a dais of polished obsidian, one occupied, one empty. Kyle sat in the occupied throne, his posture deceptively relaxed, his amber eyes fixed on the massive doors at the hall's entrance. His Shadowfang guard lined the walls. 50 of the deadliest warriors in the 12 territories, their hands resting on their weapons. Alora stood at the base of the dais, refusing to hide behind the throne. She had changed into clothes provided by the Citadel's staff, a fitted gown of moonlit white that matched the moon fire in her soul. Her silver-white hair was braided back, exposing the sharp lines of her face. She looked nothing like the cowering servant who had scrubbed Ashfall's floors. She looked like what she was becoming. The doors groaned open. Theron Blackwell strode in like he owned the hall. He was handsome in a cruel way, with sharp features and cold gray eyes that had once made Elora's heart race with naive affection. Now they made her stomach turn. Behind him walked Vesper, dressed in black silk, her amber eyes scanning the room with calculated interest, and flanking them both were warriors in silver armor emblazoned with a crescent moon, the Order of the Silver Veil. Theron stopped 30 feet from the dais. His eyes found Alora, and something ugly flickered across his face before he smoothed it into a mask of wounded concern. Alora. His voice dripped with false relief. Thank the goddess you're safe. When you disappeared, I feared the worst. The forest is dangerous, my love. You could have been killed. The audacity of it stole Alora's breath. He stood there, the man who had beaten her, starved her, sold her to harvesters, and spoke as if he were a worried husband searching for his lost bride. Do not address her. Kyle's voice cut through the hall like a blade through silk. You lost that right when you signed the contract to sell her organs. Theron's mask slipped for just a moment. Then he recovered, turning to face the throne. Alpha King Kyle, I come seeking the return of my mate. Whatever lies she has told you, I assure you our relationship is. I heard the conversation myself. Kyle didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to through her memories. Every word you spoke to Lord Corvinus about draining her. Every coin you negotiated for her body. He leaned forward slightly. Would you like me to recite the exact figure you agreed upon? It was quite specific. The Order warriors shifted uncomfortably. Even fanatics didn't appreciate being associated with harvesters. Theron's jaw tightened. Memories can be manipulated. Everyone knows White Wolf Moonfire corrupts the mind. Whatever you think you saw, Ember. The word came from one of the Silver Veil commanders, a tall woman with ice-white hair and scars crossing her face. You said White Wolf. The temperature in the room dropped. The commander stepped forward, her pale eyes fixing on Elora with sudden, intense interest. Is it true? The girl carries the Moonfire. She is under my protection, Kyle said. Whatever designs your order has. The order's mandate is clear. The commander's voice was flat, emotionless. The White Wolves are an existential threat to wolfkind. If this girl carries even a spark of that bloodline, she must be contained, studied, and if necessary, extinguished. Elora felt her wolf surge against its remaining chains, snarling in fury. You will not touch her! Kyle rose from his throne, and the sheer pressure of his aura made several of the Ashfall warriors stumble backward. She is a guest in my kingdom. An attack on her is an attack on the Veiled Dominion. Then you choose war, the commander said simply. The order answers to a higher authority than territorial kings, the moon goddess herself. The order twisted the moon goddess's name to justify genocide. Kyle's voice thundered through the hall. I will not let her finish the job 1,000 years later. Theron, seeing his opportunity slipping away, stepped forward. There's no need for war. The girl is my mate. The bond still exists. By ancient law, she belongs to me, regardless of what territory she flees to. You rejected her. Elora's voice surprised everyone, including herself. It rang clear and strong through the hall. The moment you planned to sell me, the moment you chose another woman for your Luna, you severed whatever claim you had. Theron's eyes narrowed. I never formally rejected you. The words were never spoken in the eyes of the law. Then speak them now. Silence crashed through the hall. Elora descended from the dais, walking toward her former mate with steady steps. Her wolf was howling inside her, begging to be released, but she held it back. This confrontation needed to happen in human form. It needed words, not claws. Reject me, Theron. She stopped 3 feet from him, close enough to see the sweat beading on his temple. Say the words, free us both. Unless, she tilted her head, a cold smile touching her lips. Unless you're afraid of what I might become without your chains. Theron's face contorted with rage. For a moment, Elora thought he might strike her right there in front of the king and the order and 200 witnesses. Instead, he laughed. It was a harsh, bitter sound. You think you've won something? You think hiding behind a king makes you powerful? He leaned close, his voice dropping to a whisper only she could hear. I will never reject you, Elora, never, because as long as the bond exists, I have a claim. And I will use that claim to drag you back, even if I have to burn this entire kingdom to do it. He pulled back, addressing the hall. I invoke the right of reclamation. By ancient law, I challenge any who would keep my mate from me. If the king wishes to protect her, let him face me in the arena, or let her face me herself." His smile turned vicious. "Unless the white wolf is too frightened to fight her own battles." Kyle moved to step forward, but Elora's voice stopped him. "I accept." Every head in the hall turned to her. "Elora," Kyle said, his voice tight with warning. "You've barely controlled your first shift. He's been training for combat since childhood. Then I'll learn fast." Elora turned to face Theron, and for the first time, she let the moonfire in her eyes burn visibly, turning her violet irises to silver moonfire. "Tomorrow at dawn in your arena, no champions, no interference." She stepped closer to Theron, close enough to feel the fear he was desperately trying to hide. "You spent 5 years teaching me what pain feels like," she whispered. "Tomorrow I return the lesson." The Arena of Ashes was a coliseum carved into the mountainside behind Thornhaven Citadel. Its floor was black volcanic sand, its walls inscribed with the names of every warrior who had ever bled upon its surface. For 1,000 years, disputes that could not be resolved by words had been settled here in blood and fire. The stands were packed before dawn. Word had spread through the 12 territories like wildfire. The white wolf had returned. She was fighting her former mate, and the Alpha King himself had declared that anyone who interfered would face immediate execution. Elora stood at the northern gate wearing fitted leather armor that allowed full range of motion. Her hands were bare. She had refused weapons. This would be settled between wolves, not steel. Kyle appeared beside her, his expression carved from granite. "I could end this in seconds," he said quietly. "One word and my guard would cut him down. No one would blame you for accepting help against a trained warrior. Everyone would blame me." Elora met his eyes. "Every wolf in this arena is watching to see what the white wolf really is. If I hide behind you, I'm just another weak Omega who needed saving. If I fight my own battle," she took a breath, "then I'm something else entirely." Kyle studied her for a long moment. Then unexpectedly, he reached out and cupped her face in his hands. "You are already something else entirely," he murmured. "You survived 5 years of torment without breaking. You escaped when escape seemed impossible. You crossed a cursed forest that has killed wolves far stronger than you." His thumb traced her cheekbone. "Whatever happens in that arena, you have already proven more strength than the Blackwell will ever possess." He leaned down and pressed his lips to her forehead. "But if he kills you," Kyle whispered against her skin, "I will tear his heart from his chest and feed it to the crows slowly." Despite everything, Elora smiled. Romantic! The gate began to rise. "Go," Kyle said, stepping back. "Show them what moonfire looks like." The volcanic sand crunched beneath Elora's bare feet as she walked to the center of the arena. Across from her, Theron emerged from the southern gate, stripped to the waist, his muscular body gleaming with oil. He was grinning. "I'm going to enjoy this," he called across the sand. "When I'm done, you'll be begging me to take you back. You'll crawl across this arena on your hands and knees and thank me for being merciful." Elora said nothing. She was listening to the voice inside her, the ancient presence that had been growing stronger with every passing hour. "He is arrogant," her wolf observed. "He thinks size determines strength. Show him otherwise. Begin." The herald's voice echoed through the Colosseum. Theron shifted instantly. His transformation was smooth, practiced, his wolf form erupting from his body in a cascade of gray fur and snapping bone. He was large for an alpha, nearly 6 feet at the shoulder, his eyes burning with cruel anticipation. He lunged without hesitation, expecting her to freeze, expecting the cowering servant he had brutalized for 5 years. Elora didn't freeze. She waited until the last possible second, until his jaws were inches from her throat, and then she moved. Her body flowed like water around his attack, her hand catching the scruff of his neck and using his own momentum to slam him face first into the volcanic sand. The crowd gasped. Theron scrambled to his feet, snarling and sand-coating his muzzle. He circled her now, more cautious, reassessing. Elora still hadn't shifted. "What's wrong?" she asked calmly, expecting an easy kill. Terrain roared and charged again. This time he was smarter, feinting left before snapping right. His claws raked across her arm, drawing blood. The pain was sharp, clarifying. Elora felt her wolf surge against its chains. "Not yet," she told it. "Let him think he's winning." Theron pressed his advantage, driving her back across the arena with a flurry of attacks. He was faster than she expected, stronger, his combat training evident in every calculated strike. Elora blocked what she could, dodged what she couldn't, and let the rest draw blood. The crowd began to murmur. The white wolf was losing. The legend was a fraud. Theron pinned her against the arena wall, his massive paw on her chest, his jaws hovering over her throat. "Submit," he growled, his voice echoing in her mind through the remnants of their bond. "Submit, and I might let you live as my slave instead of my trophy." Elora looked up at him, blood trickling from a gash on her forehead, and she smiled. "You want to see what I really am?" She stopped holding back. The chains inside her didn't break, they incinerated. Her wolf exploded outward in a supernova of silver and white gold. The transformation was so violent, it threw Theron across the arena like a rag doll. When the light faded, the white wolf stood in the center of the Colosseum. She was twice Theron's size. Her fur blazed like living moonlight, casting silver shadows across the black sand. Her eyes were twin moons burning with ancient power. Moonfire radiated from her body in invisible waves, turning the air itself into a shimmering curtain. The entire arena fell silent. Theron staggered to his feet, and for the first time, Elora saw real fear in his eyes. He had beaten her, starved her, sold her, and never once seen her as a threat. He saw her now. He tried to run. The great alpha, who had terrorized her for 5 years, turned tail and fled toward the southern gate like a whipped dog. Elora didn't let him reach it. She moved in a blur of flame, appearing in front of him before he could take 3 steps. Her massive paws slammed down on his back, pinning him to the sand. The crowd erupted into chaos. Some cheered, some screamed. The Order of the Silver Veil was on their feet, their commander shouting orders that no one could hear over the roar of the moonfire. Elora lowered her head until her silver eyes were level with Tehran's terrified face. "Submit!" The word wasn't spoken. It was branded directly into his mind, carrying the weight of 1,000 years of suppressed fury. Theron whimpered. His wolf went limp beneath her, exposing his throat in the most complete surrender a wolf could offer. But Alora didn't stop there. "Reject me!" Her voice was moonfire and thunder echoing through the arena. "Say the words, end the bond. Now I, Theron Blackwell." His voice cracked with terror. "I reject you, Alora Ashford, as my mate." The bond shattered. Alora felt it snap like a rotted rope, the last chain tying her to her old life dissolving into ash. She removed her paw from his back and stepped away. "Run," she commanded. "Run back to your pack and tell them what you saw. Tell them the white wolf has returned, and tell them if anyone comes for me again, I will burn their territory to the ground and salt the earth with their ashes." The wren ran. He shifted into human form and sprinted for the gate, naked and broken, not daring to look back. Alora threw back her head and howled, a sound of triumph and liberation that shook the mountain itself. The arena erupted, but not everyone was cheering. The Silver Veil commander moved the moment Alora's howl faded. "Contain her!" she screamed, and a dozen Order warriors surged over the arena walls, their hands glowing with silver light. Artifacts designed to neutralize wolf abilities. They never reached her. Kyle dropped from the royal box, landing between Alora and the attackers with bone-shattering force. His shift was instantaneous, his wolf form erupting outward, a massive beast of pure midnight black, with eyes like silver moonfire. The two alpha wolves stood side by side, fire and shadow, facing down an army. "The Order has no jurisdiction here." Kyle's voice thundered through the arena. "This is sovereign territory of the Veiled Dominion. Any act of aggression is an act of war." The commander didn't back down. The white wolf must be contained. The prophecy states she will unite or destroy. Kyle's wolf form rippled with barely restrained power. She just defeated an alpha without killing him. She showed mercy to a man who showed her none. "Does that sound like destruction to you?" The commander hesitated. It was enough. Alora stepped forward, her luminous white form casting long shadows across the sand. She didn't attack. She simply looked at the Order warriors with those ancient silver eyes. "I know what your order did to my mother," she said, her voice eerily calm. "I know you hunted her. I know you would have killed me in my cradle if you'd found me. But I'm not going to fight you. Not today." She tilted her massive head. "Today, I'm going to give you a choice." The commander's hand tightened on her weapon. "We don't negotiate with monsters. You can be my enemy," Alora continued, ignoring her. "You can spend the rest of your lives hunting me, fearing me, waiting for me to become the monster you've convinced yourselves I am." Or she paused, letting the word hang in the heated air. "You can watch, you can wait, you can see what I actually do with this power before you decide I'm a threat." The silence stretched. "1 year," Alora said. "Give me 1 year to prove the prophecy doesn't have to end in ash. If I fail, if I become what you fear, I will surrender myself to your order without resistance." The commander stared at her for a long moment. Something shifted in her scarred face, something that might have been doubt. 1 year, the commander finally said, "But we will be watching every moment, every decision. she signaled her warriors to stand down. Alora's moonfire dimmed slightly. She hadn't realized how tense she'd been until the immediate threat passed. Then she felt it. The moonfire started in her chest, spreading outward like silver light across dark water. It was different from battle rage, different from ordinary wolf power. This was deeper, older, a sacred lunar surge that demanded an anchor before it consumed her. The moonfire surge. The trial triggered it, just as your mother's prophecy predicted. When a white wolf claims victory, her power demands an anchor strong enough to carry the flame. Alora staggered, her massive wolf form beginning to waver. The aura that erupted from her was unlike anything the arena had ever experienced. Silver, cold, and bright as moonlight over snow. Every wolf in the stadium felt the ancient pressure of her power, and the weaker ones stumbled back in fear. "No!" Alora growled, fighting to maintain control. "Not now." Kyle was at her side instantly, his black wolf form pressing against hers, his aura flaring outward to shield her moonfire. Back to the citadel, he commanded his guard, "Clear the path. Anyone who approaches her without permission dies." He pressed his muzzle against her burning fur. "Hold on," he murmured. "Just a little longer. We're almost there. Stay with me." They ran. The citadel's inner sanctum was sealed with blood wards that had protected the royal line for generations. Kyle carried Elora through the final doorway and laid her on a bed of furs before the eternal moonfire that burned at the chamber's heart. She had shifted back to human form, but her skin was luminous, radiating heat that made the air shimmer. Her breathing was ragged, her violet eyes flickering between their natural color and silver white. "The heat," she gasped, clutching the furs beneath her. I can't think. The moonfire surge is different from a normal wolf's," Kyle said, kneeling beside her. His own breathing was strained, his pupils dilated. Her power was affecting him, too, but 8 centuries of discipline kept him anchored. "It won't drive you mad, but it will demand an anchor. If you don't, if I don't, what? The moonfire will turn inward. It will consume you from within." His jaw tightened. Your mother's texts described it. A white wolf touched by moonfire must either form a chosen bond or channel the energy into creation, a new pack, a new territory, something to pour the flame into. Elora laughed bitterly. "I don't have a pack. I don't have territory. I don't have anything. You have me." The words hung between them, heavy with implication. Kyle's hand found hers, his callous fingers interlacing with her burning ones. "I told you I've been waiting for you for 800 years, he said quietly. "I didn't just mean as a king waiting for a prophecy. My wolf recognized yours the moment you crossed my border. The bond Theron tried to counterfeit, the bond Moonshade and Fear twisted into chains." He brought her hand to his chest, pressing it against his heart. "It was never truly his. It was always supposed to be ours." Elora felt it then, the pull she had mistaken for Terran's claim, the magnetic attraction she had thought was a curse. It had never belonged to her former mate at all. The moonshade and the false mate mark had twisted her instincts, masking the true call that had been leading her toward Kyle all along. "The bond is yours to accept or reject," Kyle continued, his voice rough. "I won't force anything on you. I've seen what that looks like. But if you want this, if you want me, his amber eyes blazed. I will spend eternity making you forget that any other man ever touched you. The heat surged inside her, no longer painful, but electric, demanding. Alora pulled him toward her. I'm done running, she whispered against his lips. I'm done being afraid. I choose you, Kyle Vorthen. I choose Moonfire over Ash. Their lips met, and the eternal moonfire behind them exploded upward, piercing through the ceiling of the citadel, visible for 100 miles in every direction. The White Wolf had chosen her mate, and the 12 territories would never be the same. 3 months later, the world had transformed. The great hall of Thornhaven Citadel was filled to capacity. Representatives from every pack in the 12 territories gathered for an event that hadn't occurred in 1,000 years: the coronation of a White Wolf queen. Alora stood at the entrance, waiting for the doors to open. She wore a gown that seemed woven from living flame, white silk that shimmered with threads of silver and pale gold, a train that stretched 20 feet behind her. Her silver-white hair was crowned with a circlet of white gold and moonstones, a gift from the Shadowfang Guard, who had sworn themselves to her service. But it was her eyes that drew attention. Once violet, they now burned with permanent flecks of gold, a visible mark of the power she had learned to control over the past 90 days. The Order of the Silver Veil stood at the back of the hall, watching. True to their word, they had observed everything, every decision, every act. And slowly, reluctantly, their suspicion had turned to something approaching respect. Alora had not destroyed, she had built. She had established a sanctuary for wolves who had been cast out by their packs, omegas, rogues, and others who had nowhere else to go. She had negotiated treaties between territories that had been feuding for centuries. She had walked into hostile pack houses alone and walked out with alliances that diplomats had failed to secure for generations. The moonfire that forges, they were calling her now, not the fire that destroys. The doors swung open. Alora walked down the aisle, past faces that ranged from awe to hope to grudging acceptance. At the far end, Kyle waited on the dais, his dark armor gleaming, his amber eyes fixed on her with an intensity that made her wolf purr. Beside the dais, in the position reserved for servants of the crown, knelt a figure in simple gray robes, Vesper Crane. The former mistress had been captured trying to flee, with stolen artifacts 3 days after Terran's defeat. She had begged for execution, but Alora had denied her. Death was too easy. Instead, Vesper would spend the rest of her sentence in Crown's service, rebuilding shelters for abused mates and wolfless girls, forced to serve the powerless women she had once mocked. Vesper didn't look up as Alora passed. She didn't dare. Alora ascended the dais and turned to face the crowd. Kyle took her hand, raising it high. I present to you, his voice thundered through the hall, Queen Alora, the White Wolf, Moonfire of the Veiled Dominion, my mate. The crowd erupted into cheers that shook the mountain, but Alora's eyes drifted to the massive windows at the hall's edge, to the forest that stretched beyond, to a specific shadow among the distant trees. A lone gray wolf stood at the tree line, Therin. He had been spotted several times over the past months, lingering at the edges of the territory, watching. The Ashfall pack had exiled him after his humiliating defeat, stripping him of his title and his lands. He was a rogue now, a lone wolf with nothing but his bitterness and his regret. Elora met his distant gaze. She didn't smile, she didn't gloat. She simply turned away, dismissing him from her attention the way he had once dismissed her from his heart. Some endings weren't about revenge. Some endings were about becoming so far beyond your enemies that they simply ceased to matter. Kyle squeezed her hand. "Are you all right?" Elora looked at her mate, at her kingdom, at the thousands of wolves who now looked to her for guidance. She thought of the cleaning girl who had scrubbed floors in the darkness. She thought of the frightened woman who had fled into a cursed forest, expecting to die. That woman was gone. "I'm perfect," Elora said, and as the celebration erupted around them, as the silver flames of a new era blazed to life, the White Wolf Queen smiled. She had fled into the forest to escape her past. She had found her future with a kiss, and the kingdom that once threw her away was now kneeling at her feet.